of the VC money invested in Africa, with 160 million invested across the region. We're not there yet of having the same amount of VC dollars invested as we have with the ratio of population of GDP, because it's 7% versus 12%. So we're still almost like halfway there. So we still have a long way to go, and I think the panel here hopefully will try to address some of the root causes for that and what we can do going forward to improve that. So I think first we can look at the opportunities on the market, and starting from a broad picture on the African market at large. About 37% of the VC money went into fintechs. The next big segments are e-commerce and clean tech, with 13% each. So the three sectors here are about 2/3 of the African market. And so I'll turn to you, ladies and gents, to ask you whether you feel that this split is the same from your perspective in Francophone Africa. And maybe I'll start with you, Cédric, because of your model that really looks at what happens across Africa, trying to bring those ideas in Francophone Africa. What's your perspective on this?
So thanks for the question. So just to clarify some numbers from you, if you take away Maghreb, so the north of Africa, you are taking 2 points out of the 7. So it's even, and roughly you are taking also around 2 points on GDP. So it's interesting to see that there is a parallel for that. What to say? What is true is the French Francophone Africa, the way we call it is Sub-Saharan French Francophone Africa. So this is mainly UMOA, as well as I think there is a clear opportunity in Central Africa that are French speaking as well. So I'm speaking about Congo, Congo-Brazza, Congo-Kinshasa, as well as Gabon and Cameroon, that are also, I think, interesting markets. Again, a little bit like untapped markets so far, and so we believe there is a great opportunity there. What I think, since we are talking about Playbook, within M Studio we have deploy a playbook of 100 tasks to be able to achieve what a startup should be doing in the region. And within this playbook that we're putting in place, what we see that there is great opportunity to develop quality deal flow to VC, like Launch Africa or Savvy or yourself, because today the quality and the level of the startup are not yet there. And so there is a lack of offering, I would say, compared to what investors are ready to invest, and a lack of quality investment. So I think there is an opportunity through a playbook that could be eventually, with a quality playbook, be able to provide a better deal flow and a qualified deal flow.
Thanks, Cédric. You want to share something?
Can you repeat the question?
So the question was, in terms of sectors, so fintech, clean tech, and e-commerce are the three big things that happen on the continent. Do you see any difference between Francophone markets on which you focus and the rest of Africa, basically?
I'm not sure about that, but I would say that when we started to invest in the region back in 2018, we saw most of the opportunities, like in the Anglophone Africa, in the fintech space, obviously. Just because, you know, of the fact that the economies are still very cash-based, because of the fact that most of the population is still unbanked, and you have a huge credit gap. So most of the opportunity came from that. And then we saw also a lot of opportunities in the logistics space, I would say, and in marketplaces. Right now, I think we see more diversity in the sector that the companies are trying to tackle. So we see also opportunities in the healthcare space. We see more, I don't know, telemedicine platform, new companies trying to build full stack insurance companies, for example. We see more opportunities also in the edtech space. whether it is B2C or B2B, like with the new upscaling platform for businesses. And we are very happy to see more opportunities just beyond the fintech space.
Thank you, Cynthia. And so maybe asking you the same question, Lina, because you have such a large portfolio. I think it makes sense to have your view on that as well.
I'll actually just support what Cynthia said. Fintech was definitely, or has been definitely, a strong trend. And the same was all happening as well in Francophone Africa. I think part of it is one of the critical pieces in improving people's life is to improve how capital moves. So fintech is trying to resolve how capital move between individuals, between companies, between individuals and companies. So that's where there's been a good chunk of opportunities. But like she mentions, we are seeing definitely diversity. So logistics, healthcare, climate tech now, as we are trying to resolve the big issues of how to take care of our planet for ourselves and for future generations.
Thank you.
And thank you, guys. Can we give it up for the Minister of the Numerical Transition and Digitalization in Côte d'Ivoire, Mr. Khalil Konaté, le ministre de la Transition numérique et de la Digitalisation. Okay. Thank you, sir, for being here. We are talking about building a playbook for investment in Francophone Africa. We shall go ahead. We shall proceed, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Glad to have you here, Minister. Thank you. Maybe following up on this, are there specific sectors or opportunities in Francophone Africa that you're seeing less of in other markets that you're particularly excited about? Cynthia?
I would say that in our approach, we don't think about it like compared to other markets, but some segments we are particularly excited about, for example, in the fintech space, I would say, for example, cross-border payment, we touched upon this morning, so helping, the SMEs that are at the core of the economies in the region, but which is also the case all over Africa, but to be able to pay their suppliers, whether they are in the surrounding country, from the WME zone or for the CEMAC zone, or even from new corridor like China to Ivory Coast, for example. We are seeing more companies trying to tackle this issue to be able to decrease the cost of transaction and to do like a faster transaction to improve the condition of this cross-border trade. Other opportunities that we see, I mentioned, the healthcare space, the way some companies are trying to bring more efficiency to the healthcare system, to improve the access to medicine, and to digitize and optimize the care pathway and the relationship between the end users, the patients, the pharmacies, the healthcare providers, and the insurers.
Add something on that. I think when we look basically at Francophone Africa, what you've seen basically is that first, from a geographical point of view, I mean, when you look, for example, in terms of investment that has been attracted in the region, you see that you have strong economies. You have Senegal, you have Côte d'Ivoire. For example, Senegal was top 10 in terms of attracting VC. Côte d'Ivoire was top 11, according to Partech Africa report. And I think in 2023, there was almost $21 million, basically into 14 different deals. What you look as what my co-panelists told is that initially you have a lot of interest in fintech. So fintech is basically the initial layer in which you need to fix initially the financial rails. You need to make sure that people are able to transact easily, and then from there you see different sectors that from which you can build on this financial risk. So today, for example, you have traditional sectors, like edtech, like edtech, what they mentioned. But what you see increasingly emerging, for example, you're seeing more of agtech companies. So in the agricultural space, that have been coming, and you also see. Although it's not spoken of and it's not purely tech related, but you also see clean tech, basically. So you have more of clean technology companies, energy companies that are able to position themselves in the landscape. and are trying to find the right product market fit and attracting the right investors in order to grow.
Thanks. I'll have then a follow-up question for you, Richard, and I'll ask you the same question, Lina, as well. You are originally non-Francophone funds. So what do you see as the main barriers to investing in Francophone Africa? This is your opportunity to shine with the minister in the room.
Thank you. I think one thing for sure is that brilliance is distributed everywhere. Talent, brilliance is distributed everywhere. You'll find brilliant startup founders. You can find them in Lagos, you can find them in Abidjan, you can find them in Casablanca, everywhere. Ultimately, I think one thing is that a lot of funding is concentrated in so-called Anglophone, Saxophone countries. And so initially when they come in Africa, I would say the initial idea or the initial route would be to look into Anglophone countries, okay? As they grow, as they try to understand the environmental landscape in Africa, then they tend to see, okay, you know what? We're investing in half of Africa, but we're realizing that there's a other half Africa. And this other half Africa is Francophone Africa. And so you're seeing more and more interest in Francophone Africa. I would say there are some barriers that I mentioned. First of all, people are mentioning the language barrier, obviously. But I mean, we were impressed today to see a lot of Ivorian startup founders coming here on the pitching stage and pitching in English. Yeah. So so I'm seeing that this is less and less of a trouble. But I think ultimately what will really also be helpful is to try to engage more stakeholders. We have the ability to look not only at involving not only funds that are coming, trying to attract them, providing the right environment for them, but also working with the government in terms of having the right environmental landscape. We've seen that in Algeria with the Algeria Startup Fund, which was able to attract $411 million this year. And I bet you that you're going to see more and more of Algerian startup success stories emerging. So we need to just keep this conversation ongoing and keep the government in the conversation, keep angel investors in the conversation, keep big corporates in the conversation, and try to really improve our own environment. I think that's where we should be heading.
Thank you. Lina?
So I'll tackle the question in terms of partly what's in our control and what's not in our control. So what's not in our control is the historical aspect, right? Most of the money, the VC money, comes from the US. We all know that US have a very limited understanding of the continent, so they will tend to go where they feel the most comfortable, and the language is there. You also have some historical ties, if you will, between the US, the UK, which facilitates getting into places like South Africa, and, Kenya, and Egypt, and Nigeria. So that's the part that unfortunately we are going to play catch up for some time. Now, when you look at what is under our control, there is, if you will, struggle on both sides. From the VC side, we do have to make an effort, right, in entering those markets. It has to be a conscious and intentional goal to say, I am going to look at what's happening in Côte d'Ivoire, in Senegal, in Cameroon, in Tunisia, and actually build a strategy, whether it's in your hiring efforts or your investment efforts towards those geography. Now, on the founder side, I will say the biggest struggle is from what I have personally seen, is being investor ready. Right? He mentioned brilliance is distributed. There are some truly great ideas there, but when you start listening to a lot of pitches, what you realize is that sometimes founders in the Francophone area, and part of it is cultural, are not truly ready in how they are expressing their ideas. Not that the idea is bad, it's often how they express it. And also, when you start to do the due diligence, you have to look at what is ready in terms of documentation. Nigerians, Kenyans, South African, and Egypt, a lot of them have gone to, universities or have worked in the US. So they have sort of like the culture and the preparation for what is typical in a data room, which is not always the case with Francophone Africa. So I think, places like M Studio or other accelerators and incubators have to really emphasize the investors' readiness for the founders.
No, that's a great point you're making. I was told this story by a South African investor that got a very successful exit with a leading US payment company. They were telling me that about 2/3 of the due diligence time was spent on the governance aspect. And I think, like you said, there's a lot of work to prepare entrepreneurs to be ready to not only receive investment, but also simply to work to contractualize with foreign companies. And I think, this is one of the things I wanted to discuss with you and the audience. But I think so. We have I think 3 big areas that we can look at: how to collaborate between startups and African corporates, how we can collaborate between startups and non-African corporates, and how we can collaborate between startups and other startups, whether African or not. And I mean, starting with collaboration that can lead potentially to an acquisition down the line. And we're seeing more of these happening. And I think this is how the ecosystem will thrive eventually. Investors getting their money back, reinvesting, entrepreneurs being successful, launching other ventures. And I think each and every of you here on the panel have a role to play in building those partnerships, in catalyzing those partnerships. And so, maybe Cedric, you want to add something on this?
So I think, this is definitely a great opportunity, a great opportunity. Thank you. À bientôt. Merci. There is really a great opportunity for the French Francophone Africa to be bought over. Simply, when you see few startups from the English-speaking Africa that tried to come here and didn't succeed, we had few. Sandy came over and had issue. Waspito came over and Wasoko, sorry, not Waspito, sorry. Sorry. Mismanipulation. Wasoko came for that. I would say few of them came and had issue. Flutterwave had issue as well. And why? Because there is some language barrier, and you cannot. You need to handle that, and it's part of the story, and you should manage it. So the question is, if you can build startups that can be acquired because they are well structured, governance, documentation is well structured, then I think there is an opportunity. And there is not yet enough exits in Africa, so exit is really a topic, because if there is no exits, VC won't come. The VC are here to make some exits, and we have few of them, but it's still the early phase of the exit. And maybe I'm wrong, but my belief or my wish is that the exit will come more and faster within French Francophone Africa, because those players, I would say especially, let's say the big guys that are, let's say, loaded by US VC, that really wants to play an American, a full Pan-African play, would try to find a way to come in Francophone Africa. And I did some acquisition in the past when I was on a larger corporate. And what is sure is you have far less risk by taking, acquiring a company instead of starting from zero, from ground zero. So it's like a 10x risk being over. And if you really want to penetrate the market, if you really want to having a Pan-African play, having an acquisition in the region could really make sense. So I think it's the role of VC, startup studio, and companies like Seedstar as well, to really highlight those startups so that they will be visible for other part of the market and from the other side of the African market to be well positioned for acquisition. So I see that as an opportunity.
No, exactly, and thanks for that. I think we all agree with that, right? But I think for a startup, it's different to look. Let me step back and give you some context. When we first started our latest fund, we thought that the easiest target to invest in the fund, because they would be interested in accessing African innovation, would be European corporates. And starting with the large European corporates that are active in Francophone Africa and throughout Africa. None of them are really interested in that. And so I'm seeing this as a challenge, but I think we need collectively to sort of like build the path to this happening down the line, right? How do we get these large corporates to invest? Same thing for the African corporates. I think African corporates have a different problem. They're very interested, but having an African bank paying the multiples that a startup will be expecting at a Series B, C, or further down is going to be extremely difficult, right? So what are we left with, and how can we support the companies in building those partnerships early to make sure that there is a path for them and for us as investors to these exits. I don't know if anyone wants to opine on this.
I mean, yes, you are definitely right that the conversation around exit is something that should happen earlier in the journey of the startup than what we used to. The second piece is also having a little bit of grace for our ecosystem. Like you mentioned, it's pretty new. It's about only 10 years old, if that. And part of what that means is we've had to learn the lesson you just mentioned, right? So, because normally, globally, exit in a VC meant an IPO. And for us, it was like waking up to realize, okay, it's definitely not going to be an IPO. It's going to be a merger or an acquisition. So now what does that look like? Is it a merger between two startups, a merger with a sort of not an SME, but like a medium, enterprise trying to become a big one? Is it being acquired by a bigger company? So there's all these models, and then now we're also starting to seeing, especially for us as a pre-seed seed companies, we see secondary markets, right, as a potential exit. So for me, part of this is also trying to do what we do as Africans, is being creative in how we're solving some of our challenges, and not necessarily thinking we're going to copy paste the model that has worked in the US or in Europe or even in Asia. I think the other piece is sort of what you mentioned in making those startups ready. I think at some point we fell into the US trap of failing fast and growing at all costs, and our economies are just not ready for that type of model. We actually have to look to have profitable growth. Just growing at all costs and thinking it's by your Series C or D that you're going to be profitable is just not viable. So to really build that exit market, founders really early on have to think about what's the path towards profitability.
Thank you. Do you have?
Maybe to summarize what everyone said, it's true that as an investor in this ecosystem that is very nascent, we feel like we have kind of the responsibility to help the ecosystem grow and to catalyze it, which means that, for example, at Savvy, we do a lot of evangelization. First, I would say with the Anglophone investors, so we speak regularly with, for example, investors that have done a few investment or no investment in Francophone Africa. They want to discover it, so they speak with us to have some insight. They call us when they want to do a trip here to know what are the startups they should speak to have access to our deal flow, and we are always very happy to share because in the round, we can co-invest with them, so there is no issue. We are very happy to show them the potential of the ecosystem, and it's very interesting also because they are also potential partner for our exit, because as you said, we invest at seed, from pre-seed to Series A, and some of these players are also growth investors that might be able to invest in primary but also in secondary, so that's interesting for us. I would say that we also do evangelization because we are very active and we work a lot with incubator, accelerator, and the M Studio, startup builders, helping the founders to know what VC what VC wants to see, helping them to be ready to get some investment, which means just participate to startup context story. For example, in Senegal, you have l'ADER, the government with BPI France. They have started a program called Lion's Tech, and they organize very regularly some events, and we can be part of the investment committee, and provide them with some insight and so on. So it's really also our responsibility to help the founders understand what VC are looking for in the company, what they want to see in the data room, and so on. And the last one is what you said about the corporates. We learn with the Fund One that indeed, if we want to see exit with corporate, we have to start connecting them with our portfolio very early in the journey. And I would say that we are always in discussion with them, with their innovation team, but also with operation team, to share our deal flow, to also understand what are their needs in terms of innovation. And some of our portfolio companies are in discussion with them for exit, but it's something that takes a lot of time because they also want to see the progress. They are speaking with them for, frankly, a few years, and it's only like that I think we will see maybe exit in the next year.
Yeah, just to add something out there, I think when we're speaking of startup corporates, how we can foster startup corporate partnerships, things that I've seen that work sometimes is that you can also work from the level of engaging basically the whole wide membership body association. So for example, here in Côte d'Ivoire, we have Le Patronat Ivoirien, for example, which is a patronal organization. And what happens is that they tend to have commissions. So sometimes you could engage with them traditionally and try to see how best you could come up, with structuring programs that are able to make an impact. Also, I've seen that a lot of times, big companies tend to listen a lot to some of their consultants. So sometimes also it helps to look and try to engage them through that way. On the investment readiness approach, I think my journey basically here in Côte d'Ivoire is that I spent basically the last 10 to 12 years trying to build the ecosystem, contribute to building the ecosystem in Côte d'Ivoire. So I've had both the chance to be an entrepreneur myself and more recently an angel investor. What I would say there is that what sometimes is not given from VCs sometimes is that we need to provide startups with a sort of cheat sheet. You need to give them the cheat sheet of how to be investment ready. You just can't tell them, okay, you need to be investment ready, you need to have access to the data room, and at the end of the day, okay, I'm interested, I have some sort of product market fit and some revenue coming and flowing in, and then they're suddenly fine with the whole data room with so much information that needs to be given, out of nowhere, sometimes. But if we're able to prepare them as a whole ecosystem and provide them with in advance with the cheat sheet and them tell that's how you need to engage with VCs, that's how you need to engage with them, and providing them with the clues, the right information, then you give them, to some extent, some time in advance so that they get prepared, and I'm kind of more investment ready when it's time, to come to them. I think the way to do that is to have some, some activities, some strategy seminars and workshops that could actually be very helpful in terms of addressing this as an information gap.
Thank you, Richard. So it's interesting that you're mentioning this cheat sheet, and Cédric, you mentioned also before that you have this sort of 100 steps to a successful startups. That's a good name of our book. And so maybe back to you, Richard. What's the number one item on this list? And it cannot be something as broad as investment readiness. So the one single item that you would recommend the entrepreneurs in the room to act on for this?
Proper financial records. I would say just proper financial records. It really matters a lot. To just, you don't have necessarily to have a full-time accountant, but you can just have a part-time accountant. You can make sure that if you have to start with an Excel sheet, then you grow out, to a software. There are some very simple steps and hacks that you can use that are not costly to make sure that you have, for example, your financial, records in order. And then from there, you can, of course, look at other stuff like governance structure, making sure that one example, for example, that I've seen when we're doing some due diligence for an Ivorian startup is that sometimes the Ivorian startup, we have a legal body that is registered in Cote d'Ivoire. And then once they're ready, for example, to raise funds to some extent, and they will just probably register, abroad, maybe in Delaware or somewhere in the US. But the disconnect here is that I have the local company, which is in my name as a founder, and then I build another company. I just registered another company in the US, which happens not to own the local company in Cote d'Ivoire. So sometimes in the due diligence, this is something that you find often. And then you have to tell them, okay, then guys, you need to fix it. You need to make sure that this is aligned. So there's a lot of.
So that was the second point then.
Yeah.
Lina, you're next.
On the third one, clarity of defining your problem and your solution. The number of pitch and decks that I can go through and we just have no idea what's happening is quite astounding. So it's very important to get to the nitty gritty of exactly what is if someone tells you you have 5 seconds to tell me what is the problem that you're solving, in 5 seconds, what is that? What is the solution that you are proposing? You also have 5 seconds to say, what is that solution? And clearly explain why that solution is better than what's on the market. And in terms of, because you're gonna ask people to pay for your solution in a sustainable way. So very clearly, what is the solution that you are proposing? And it's not just marginally better, like it's truly structurally better, and it's going to change some habits, and it's going to make people more efficient or saving them money, whatever the case is. But clarity in what you are trying to propose, because in terms of pipeline, and maybe this is something that specific to Launch Africa, we have a pipeline of 400 companies every 2 to 3 months. So as you can imagine, if you have to go through that many companies, even if it's just 100, you want to see what comes out, right? You want to see the startup where the founder, whether it's on paper or via a call, is able to clearly explain what is your problem and what's the solution.
Thanks, Lina. Cedric, top item on your list.
So, of course, the first two are important and maybe more important than mine. But also to getting into clarity, a structured data room. Putting all your documents you have built for 6 months into an Excel sheet or into a Google form has no opportunity to be read by a guy that has receiving 400 deck a month or a quarter? A quarter. So what is important is to have a structured database, a structured data room where you explain clearly what you have in your data room. So you will see that my product market fit is structured by this way, this way, this way, with a little explanation that you can see. You can, for example, use Notion for that, and it's well structured for adding Notion and data room. So giving a little bit of form into documents, be able to read the documents easily through accounting, through the pitch deck, but as well as the market fit. So does my product market fit is well structured? Does my persona is well structured? Does my persona did I really meet like 100 customer, 200 customer to show that my persona is well defined? You need to give some concrete elements in your data room. Yeah, that's it. And maybe just we could feel that data room is just like boring stuff that you are doing for an investor, and it should be part of the deal to do it, because if I don't have a data room, I won't get any financing. But in reality, a good, well-structured data room, a quality data room, is the base of a good startup. Because if you have a strong data room that is well-structured, I'm not asking you to spend your day on data room, but having something strongly structured, show how you are structured by within your company, within your startups, and it's really important. I don't ask to be the founders to be like good students, having all their files super well ranked, but having a proper data room will give you structure to be able to explain clearly what you want to do and explain the pain that you are trying to solve.
Thanks. I cannot agree more with that last point you made. I think it really reflects the personality and how well structured you are. So 100%. Your turn?
Yes, so after everything you said, it was very pertinent, I would say. And just to touch upon what Richard said, because recently we had kind of an issue with an entrepreneur. We invested, we told him that before we will be able to invest, he had to clarify the incorporation, because indeed, you know, he had like the local subsidiaries, the holding, and the holding wasn't 100% the owner of the subsidiaries. And I would say that also creates a climate of distrust, you know, because we are wondering if the founder is really transparent and honest. So maybe one point I will insist is on being very honest and transparent, sharing, you know, information to the investor with clarity, because when we invest, we are trying to support the investor, the entrepreneurs, for a period of over 5 years. So we really want to be sure to invest in trustworthy people and to become, you know, a partner and be able to share information in a good environment, I would say, to finish.
Thanks. So if I recap, I really like the 5 things you said, 4.5, if I count that you've sort of like, anyways. So no, but what I find super exciting is that none of these things are specific to Francophone Africa or Anglophone Africa, right? So it means that investing around here or in Nigeria or anywhere else on the continent is just about the same for investors. And I think that's the key takeaway for entrepreneurs in the room. You also need to build those relationships early with investors. I think it never happens overnight, or in my case at least, it has never happened overnight that I decide to invest in a startup. So build those relationships early. Take the feedback that the great panelists you have in front of you, excluding myself, have given you, and I think you're on the path to a successful fundraise. There is maybe one last question that I'm surprised you have not touched on in this last question I asked you. I think we're hearing a lot about internationalization, right? And I think this is a sort of very Francophone-ish topic. Companies in Nigeria, they have less so the need to internationalize early on. So when you look at a company in Côte d'Ivoire, for instance, is it a strong expectation from the onset that the company needs or has to expand, and how soon, and what would be your recommendations on that? Do you want to start, Cynthia?
Yes, you're right. It's weird that we haven't touched upon this topic, because, as you said, it's very specific to Francophone Africa. Because if you take the individual domestic market, it is relatively small compared to Nigeria and so on. So I would say that when we invest at seed or pre-seed stage, usually the company are only based in one company, but more and more they have in mind that they will have to develop in the surrounding country. So if they are in the I would even say right now we are seeing companies starting from Cameroon going to Ivory Coast, companies starting in Ivory Coast going to Senegal or Benin afterwards. But usually what we want to see is that we invest at seed. We want them to become leader of their market, to also show that they will they have a clear path to profitability, at least in one country, before they start developing in other countries, I would say. So usually it's not that we are waiting for them from day one to be in 5 countries. It's more that we want to see the way they are reflecting on expansion, why they will choose DRC rather than Benin or Togo, because you have also some specificities in this country. But what we like is the fact that in is in those integrating economies, like you have two monetary zones, you have WEMU, you have CEMAC. It's also easier for the companies to develop rather than, for example, Kenya to Nigeria in the fintech space. If you are in Ivory Coast and you have your license in Ivory Coast, even though you will have to ask for another license in Senegal, the legal framework, the way you will tackle the issues with the central bank will be quite similar, and you will be able to take this learning to develop more easily in the other country, I would say.
No, it's true that the infrastructure with l'UMOA, BCAO, but so the CFA one, but as well as LOADA. So LOADA is the framework of legal for French Francophone Africa, brings definitely a way to move faster. But I would fully agree with what Cynthia say. You need to focus into your market, make it right, make it profitable, or I would say on the way to be profitable, and then you can move to another country. But trying to think that green grass is better on another place is a wrong idea. So focus into your grass.
Maybe it's because we're a little bit Anglo-Saxon in our way of thinking.
So 10 countries in the same time.
No, not at all. The idea is more, so I'll say this. It's not that from the beginning, because we are also quite early, right? Pre-seed and seed. So it's not that from day one you have to be in multiple countries. It's more about your thought process around it. We want to see and know that within the next couple of years that you are looking to enter those markets. And it's very emphasized on Francophone Africa for the reason that they mentioned, right? Once you've incorporated in one, it is somewhat easier to get into the next market. We do see a lot of Abidjan, Dakar, and then, you know, Cameroon to Abidjan, or like Kinshasa, so on and so forth. So it's more about, how are you thinking about your expansion? We want to be able to have that conversation, understanding why you're choosing the country that you are choosing. If you've done sort of like your homework, right? Because obviously it's like you know, the idea is you are going to be a leader, or at least get some, what I'll say, consequential market share in your local country. So what does your technique looks like as you're looking to expand? That's more of our thought process.
Richard?
Yeah, I think obviously we're fortunate to have, you know, two strong economic zones, like we mentioned, WAMO, CEMAC. For example, what you've seen is that you have had a lot of dynamism from Senegalese startups, for example, trying to to break into Cote d'Ivoire. You know, you have a lot of them that actually, you know, Yobante, Express, Socium, you know, Paydonia and so on. So you had a lot of them. I think I agree with all my brilliant co-panelists here in saying that you need to have found at least your product market fit to have had some revenue going on before looking in terms of internationalizing. The only caveat I would add here is that when you look at, for example, the WAMI region, you have smaller economies, you know, like Togo, Benin, etc. And interestingly enough, what I've seen, for example, because I had a chance to be in Togo 6 months ago, I was leading the study for GIZ for doing the ecosystem mapping for the Togolese startup scene. What you've seen is that sometimes entrepreneur startups in Togo, sometimes they find that their market they evolve in is just too small. So what you see there is that you're seeing a migration of talent coming to Cote d'Ivoire and setting up their companies from there. And it's interesting because you have also seen a number of success stories from, you know, immigrant founders, for example, that are not necessarily from Cote d'Ivoire, but are doing pretty well.
And Benin, I would say Benin and Togo has been relatively, I would say, with good education, strong skills, soft skills, very interesting profile.
Thanks. I dream of a world where, you know, it's not Nigerian, and sorry, it's just like, you know, the big elephant in the room, but not only Nigerian companies acquiring companies in Francophone Africa, but at some point we're gonna have companies in Francophone Africa acquiring Nigerian companies. But I think that's probably a topic for another Africa Arena in Abidjan. Or in Lagos, yeah, it's going to be more controversial. So I don't know if any of you has any final thoughts that you'd like to share with the audience before we take any questions.
Sure. I'll say for for the founders, I know there's been a lot of focus on fundraising. It feels like every 2 days there's some sort of news of such and such on the continent has raised this amount of millions of dollars or euros. And those are great news. It's good for our ecosystem and it's encouraging for those founders. They worked really hard. But do not put yourself in the pressure of having to fundraise to fundraise. It's really, really important because when you come in front of a VC, you also want to be able to have leverage. And I'm going to say something that's controversial for all of us investors, but sometimes we can be sharks in the water. We can smell desperation like blood, right? So you don't want to come in front of a VC and be desperate. So I would say trust your journey, trust your process. Not everyone has to raise millions of dollars or euros early on in the process. So, yeah.
Ask money when you don't need it. Me, just one word on. I think, as Lina said earlier, Africa will be surprising, I believe, and I don't think it will be done in the same way than the US and all. I fully agree with the growth. Having the right growth is very important, and I think it will be they will be, I think, surprised. Just to give you an example, 2 weeks ago, and maybe it was just a coincidence and it will not happen, but 2 weeks ago I had 2 different calls with 2 big banks from New York, and the 2 guys that were not talking to each other, they were trying to finance large startup in Brazil to take over a startup in French Francophone Africa. And I was like, what? and I was very surprised. I say, what is this American guy saying, I'm trying to find some startup in Brazil, and the Brazil will buy over the African startup. You say, wow. So I don't know if it's just a coincidence. It happened twice in the same week. So I was very surprised. You have seen more of that?
You will see more of that because the understanding is that Latin American markets, in many ways, whether it similar to us, right? The political
Talk about
frame,
the cultural difference.
Yeah, the current the currency variation. So they feel like they have a more understanding. The informal sector, all of that. So they feel they have a better understanding.
Yeah. So you see, there is surprise everywhere.
Yep. Richard?
Yeah, I think that what we're seeing is we're seeing more and more, and today I was really happy to see, founders pitching in English, and to me it's a testimony to the quality of startups, of founders. Actually, you're seeing year on year, especially in Cote d'Ivoire, the quality of founders slowly coming up. You're seeing more reparts coming up and trying to build a startup. I think the only thing is just to have grit, basically. If I have one thing, in one word, it's grit. Just push in any way, in any direction you can do it. Be productive, network, try to grab opportunities in the ecosystem that exist, and and like we say, talk early in advance with investors, and just build and make it.
Thanks. Cynthia, le mot de la fin? Final word?
En français?
Before question. Oh, in English.
What I can
You
add.
don't have to. Huh?
So I think that's good then.
All right. Thank you so much. Does any I see already questions. I don't even have to ask.
It's not a problem. Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm Fabrice Agbayou. I'm an innovation expert at Orange, builder in East Africa, but in another way, I'm a venture builder, a business angel. I have some question. It's about a startup valuation method. We don't talk about but I think that it's very important to talk about it. Yes, we cannot calculate a startup valuation as we calculate a huge firm. La valuation as Orange, MTN, a thing like that is very different. So I just want to know what method we use to calculate startup value. I think it's very important for me to understand that. Maybe DCF, I don't know. I think DCF is a problem because because of startup bandwidth period, it's very difficult to calculate startup value for that. Just want to understand that.
Thank you for the question. It's a great question. We're fighting to provide you with a good enough answer. So I'll go first, and I'll let you guys chip in as needed. I think probably we need to give you a little bit of background on how a VC fund works. So ourselves, we fundraise from investors that we call LPs. And our dear investors expect that we return between 3 and 5 times their money. So on that, we need to account for the fact that a chunk of the portfolio will fail, will disappear. Not every startup is successful. And so we need to try and get, let's say, a 10x return on every single at least 10x on every single portfolio company that we have. And so when you have this in mind, you need to understand that this is one of the key things that we will factor in our valuation methods, right? How do we build an entry price that can lead to this exit price with the value creation in between that you, the entrepreneur, will be creating? So that's the main thing. And when we see a company coming to us with $100,000 US in revenues and asking us for a 20 million valuation, there is no way that we can achieve that growth, that path between the entry and the exit points that I mentioned. So we have a number of methodologies to assess what is this realistic curve. One very obvious is I don't know if it's obvious, but one I think is one of the market practice is using comparable multiples. So you will look at companies in other parts of Africa that have done similar things and see how this equity story has built up. You will look at comparables in Brazil, for instance, which is a good, or Asia, which are good comparables as well. And so that's one key aspect of this painful job that we have to do. I'm saying painful because it's always a source of long discussions with founders. And I think that's just one of them. I think it's the cases where we have profitable companies and we can use sort of more accounting methodologies like DCF and things like that, or sort of like not the most common cases. But occasionally we do build evaluations on those methods as well. But I'll let my panelists.
So just before speaking about valorization, I say you should not focus in valorization. You should focus into a fair deal. A fair deal for yourself and a fair deal for your investor. If you put a valorization that is too high, you will be fucked off by your VC. Because a VC would try and say, hey, you put me at 20 million valorization, I'm not able to exit. Doesn't make sense for me to exit at 40. You have an opportunity to exit at 40, I'm not getting out. So the quality, the deal, I would say the quality of the deal in terms of legal, so what are the governance, what are the rights around the deal, is more important, and eventually also the balance between VC and founders in the deal, so in the governance of the deal, are as important as a valorization. So I think it's important. No, you agree? Yeah, the second element is when you are at pre-seed versus Series D, it's like an apple tree. An apple tree, when it's really at the beginning, there is no apple on the tree. Not easy to measure the number of apple there is on the tree. Further down the road, the trees has apple, and you can start to count the number of apples you can get per year. And further down the road, you can have a forest of apple tree and measure in a far more concrete way how to measure the revenue in apple in this beautiful forest. So there is always a gap between pre-seed and the reality of a Series D, because Series D comes to valorization that are closer to Orange or MTN in terms of DCF and in a far more accounting way. And so what I'm just saying is there is, between all the calculation, between all the return on investment that the VC need, there is a little bit of a gameplay that is a bit weird, where pre-seed, because the future is bright, and the apple on the tree are not visible yet, you can say, look at this beautiful tree. Would be so much apple on that tree. Whereas more there is apple on the tree, more it will be difficult for you to demonstrate that there will be far more apples. So what I'm just saying is the ratio moved from pre-seed to Series D. And so you don't have the same ratio. So that makes the calculation even far more complex.
And this is what in finance books will be called the apple tree metaphor. Thank you, Cedric. Do you want to add something, or we take another question? Okay. Julia.
Thank you. Thanks for all your intervention. It was actually very interesting. And I really like the part about when you talked that we are not as startups investment ready or not well prepared. I agree. I think a startup journey is a lot about learning every day, lots of new things, but no one told you where you find it. Like, I'm having not studied any entrepreneurship studies. It was not even existing. So today maybe it is actually existing. So my question is, it's not only about the deal room. That's like one part of it. Even the whole fundraising is one part of it. But then there's the whole entrepreneurship journey. So of course there are a lot of resources out there. But my question is, would you have something that you create actually for your entrepreneurs or for the community, the ecosystem, to know what we need to know? So, like, for example, glossa of all the terms.
You're the expert.
No, but so I would say at M Studio, we are really trying to bring, I would say, all the materials, documentation for that. And we believe it's part of our, let's say, expertise or added value to the entrepreneurs, because as you say, it's not given to have all this information, and the question is what you don't know, and so there's definitely an issue.
I'll add, I mean, I try to encourage entrepreneurs, because especially on the Francophone side, because it forces you as well to get into the, English, or the Anglophone way of speaking is like free courses like Acumen and Coursera. There are some basic classes on entrepreneurship, basic classes on VC. Sometimes people take offense to that, and I'm like, I'm not trying to tell you to learn your business. It's more about learning the language of the investors. And those courses are usually very helpful for that.
Actually, so you at the boot camp for founders that Africa Arena organized, I think it was quite interesting because I invested different investors like myself, but also Startup Studio. Leslie, the co-founder, she gave a lot of tips, for understanding the different fundraising processes from pre-seed to seed and Series A. It was very interesting. Myself, I've done a section on data room to really explain the different components and so on. And I will add that within our portfolio, we have a lot of founders, that have reached Series A, but they went through all the former steps, pre-seed, seed, and they are doing mentoring. Every day they speak with younger founders, the next generation, and they are really happy to share some of the learnings that they have acquired through the turbulent early years. So I would say also try to reach out to founders. They are very happy to share their knowledge and to bring other founders to their level.
Thank you. Do you have time for one more question, Christophe? I was wondering when is he coming up? And it's like, guys, you need to finish. I was like, okay, one last question and then we wrap it up. Thanks.
All right. So this question is to the investors in the room. So I've been one of the judges earlier today, and the question is, how often do you force yourself to put substance over form? I see we live in a world of form over substance, and I want to know how much of good deals have you lost because of the pressure to put form over substance. Maybe by legal standard, a number of those pitches I listened to today, probably I would have walked out of the room. But I took the patience to look at the value proposition and the cute value proposition. So the question is, how often do you lose good deals because you put form over substance? And what is it that you are doing beyond looking at, expecting the entrepreneurs to go learn some Coursera stuff to know how to speak your language? What effort are you guys making to make it easy? You can imagine if you're applying to Harvard, applying to all those things, you've done a lot of things over time to make it easy to get the best guys. So what are you guys doing? That's the question. Thank you.
Thanks.
Wow. That was passion. That came like a punch. Okay. The first part was form over substance, right? I wouldn't be able to tell you how often we've lost, because it would be arrogant of me to say that. The way I personally approach it, and even the rest of the team at LAV, is we're very conscious of the fact that we might be saying no to a big deal. You just have to accept that, especially when you're investing that early, right? Now, there's always substance in the sense that we have to look into traction at some point. We have to look into product market fit. We also have to rely on our personal experience, right? I grew up in Cameroon, so if you bringing me a startup from Cameroon and you're saying, even if you're not expressing yourself well and you're saying I'm solving such and such problem, I can at least bring myself back to the local realities and be like, okay, this seems like it may make sense. But again, you're right. There's probably instances where I've lost a good deal based on form. But the caveat I will also say is your ability to present your startup is not just for the investors, right? That's going to come through as well in how you acquire customers. So it's not just a form for the investors, it's also a form for your customer. Are you maybe having a customer acquisition cost that's too high because you haven't figured out how to present your startups to the different potential businesses that you're trying to acquire as customers? Now, to the second part where the question was, what are we doing? And I mentioned that earlier, that it has to be an intentional effort, right? So same thing as when you're thinking about investing in Francophone Africa, you have to say, okay, I am consciously going to make an effort not to just go to the big four or the sort of easier markets like Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, and so on. On my end, I'll say personally, for example, I'm very I think it's a matter of self-awareness. I'm very aware, for example, that I am quite Americanized. So I know now when I'm listening to a pitch, especially by a Francophone founders, I really have to pause. I really try to make sure that I write my question or that I give them the opportunity to actually pitch in French. I know that You know, we want them to pitch in English, but sometimes they're just more comfortable in French. And that's not always easy, right? But those are the things that for me, I'm trying to remember to be like, okay, in the US, you're used to a pitch in literally 2 minutes. That's not gonna be the reality here. So sit your butt down and focus and listen to this person talk for 10 minutes, right? So in the US, I would schedule 10 minutes call. Here, I'm scheduling them for 20 to 30 minutes. So those are like, the efforts are not necessarily going to be company-wide. They're also going to on a personal level.
And I just want to add one last thing on this. I agree with what you said, Lina. I think we acknowledge that form is important. I wouldn't say it's more important than substance, but we realize that there's a lack of training and resources for entrepreneurs to provide the things that we investors cannot do without. And we do a hell lot of training, actually supporting entrepreneurs before we invest, getting to the level where we expect them to be for us to be able to invest. And that's taking us a good amount of time ahead of a deal. We're fortunate also to have some resources provided by some of our own investors. So we have technical assistance that is designed for this, provided by institutions like the European Investment Bank or the African Development Bank. And that helps also a lot. And these resources are designed for this exact purpose. So we try to find solutions to the problem you highlighted. Thank you so much.